All right, let's dive into healthy eating today. Straight from the UK's National Health Service. We're going beyond just telling you what to eat. We're going to unpack why it matters, like those insider tips you'd get from a nutritionist. But without that hefty appointment fee.
And what's great about the NHS approach is it's all about balance, not cutting things out completely. They have this thing, the Eat Well Guide. It's basically a visual of how your plate should look.
Okay, so like imagine you're making dinner. What's going on that plate, according to this Eat Well guide?
Well, fruits and veggies, they're the stars. They take up a good chunk of your plate, over a third. Then there's your starchy carbs, like potatoes and bread, ideally whole grain, for that extra fiber and nutrients, to keep you feeling full and, energized.
So brown rice over white rice, whole wheat bread instead of white. But why are whole grains better? What's the science there?
It comes down to processing. Refined grains, they lose a lot of their good stuff, like fiber, which is, so important for digestion, keeps your gut happy. But whole grains, those are the superheroes of the grain world. They're packed with fiber, vitamins, minerals, all the things your body needs to thrive.
That makes total sense. Now, when I think of starchy foods, I think of white potatoes. Are those even healthy?
Oh yeah, potatoes definitely belong in a healthy diet. They're actually a great source of energy and nutrients. Fun fact, potato skins are full of fiber and vitamins, even more than the flesh.
Wow, I had no idea. That's a good takeaway for me. Okay, so we've got our fruits and veggies, we've got our whole grain starches. What else is on this Eat Well plate?
Next up is dairy or dairy alternative. Provides that protein and calcium for strong bones. The NHS suggests choosing the lower fat, lower sugar versions, like semi-skimmed milk or Greek yogurt. And if you're more into dairy alternatives, like soy milk, for instance, make sure it's unsweetened and fortified with calcium.
Right, being mindful of those added sugars. Now, you can't have a plate without protein. What did the NHS say about that?
They're all about variety, and not just meat. Fish, eggs, beans, lentils, nuts. It's a protein party on your plate.
I love that, mixing things up. So if I'm choosing meat, what should I be thinking about?
They recommend lean cuts and skinless poultry to keep that saturated fat down. And this is where it gets interesting. They say to eat at least 2 portions of fish a week, at least one of those being oily fish, like salmon or mackerel.
Okay, I've always heard oily fish is good, but what's so special about it?
It's all about those omega-3 fatty acids. Our bodies can't make those on their own. And they're linked to some really amazing health benefits. They can help lower your risk of heart disease and stroke, even some cancers. Plus, they're great for your brain. Might even help lower the risk of Alzheimer's.
Wow, that's incredible. More salmon for me. So we've got fruits and veggies, starchy carbs, dairy, protein, anything else to complete our Eat Well plate?
Just a drizzle of healthy fats. Think unsaturated oils and spreads. They can help lower cholesterol, keep your heart healthy. But even with the healthy fats, moderation is key.
So not eliminating fats completely, it's choosing the right kinds and not overdoing it.
Exactly, it's about that balance. And speaking of things to have in moderation, let's talk about the unhealthy trio: saturated fat, sugar, and salt.
Ah, yes, the usual suspects. We know too much isn't good for us. But what makes them so harmful? Why does the NHS say to limit them?
Well, let's start with saturated fat. Too much of it increases cholesterol in your blood. And that buildup of cholesterol can lead to plaque in your arteries, which restricts blood flow and increases risk of heart disease.
So that's why choosing lean meats and those unsaturated fats is so important.
Exactly. Now, sugar. It's not just empty calories and weight gain. Regularly having sugary drinks and processed foods can lead to insulin resistance, which increases your risk of type 2 diabetes.
So those sugary drinks and snacks, they're not just bad for our waistlines, but for long-term health too. What about salt?
Salt can be tricky. We need some sodium to function properly. But too much salt can raise our blood pressure because salt draws water into the bloodstream, which increases the volume of blood your heart has to pump. Over time, that high blood pressure strains your heart and blood vessels, increases the risk of heart attack, stroke, other health problems.
Wow, I never realized how connected it all is. It really shows how important it is to be mindful of what we eat.
Absolutely. It's all about making informed choices and finding that healthy balance.
So to recap, we've got those colorful fruits and veggies, fiber-rich whole grains, our protein powerhouses, a touch of healthy fats, and we're keeping an eye on the unhealthy trio: saturated fat, sugar, and salt.
And remember, this Eat Well guide, it's not just checking things off a list. It's about a sustainable way of eating, nourishing your body and supporting your well-being.
Before we get into part 2, where we'll talk about practical tips for healthy eating, I want to touch on the NHS weight loss plan. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Absolutely. It's a fantastic free resource for anyone looking to lose weight safely and sustainably. It's a 12-week program, combines healthy eating advice, portion control tips, and physical activity
So it's
recommendations.
not about drastically cutting calories. It's about creating healthy habits that you can stick with.
Exactly. The program's designed to help you make gradual changes, changes to your lifestyle that lead to lasting results. It's all about empowering you to take control of your health and well-being.
That sounds like a great resource for our listeners, anyone looking to make positive changes. We'll put more info about that in the show notes. But for now, let's take a quick break. We'll be back with part 2, where we'll explore practical tips. Tips to make healthy eating delicious and enjoyable, part of your everyday life.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Welcome back to our deep dive with the NHS, all about healthy eating. We've talked about the Eat Well guide and the science, but I'm sure you're thinking, okay, great info, but how do I actually do this in real life?
Right. It's one thing to have the guidelines. It's another thing to put them into practice. So in this part, we're talking actionable tips and strategies, things you can start doing, like today.
Perfect, because I need all the help I can get. So where do we even begin?
One of the most powerful tools is meal planning.
Okay, I've heard of that, but
Yeah.
I always picture these complicated spreadsheets and recipes. Is it really that hard?
Not at all. It's about finding what works for you. A simple way to start is look at your week ahead. What nights are busy? When do you have time to cook? Then just jot down some meal ideas based on that.
So like, if I know I have a late meeting on Wednesday, I might plan for something quick, like a stir fry or soup.
Exactly. And here's a pro tip. Before you even go to the grocery store, check what you already have in your fridge and pantry. You can build your meals around those ingredients. Avoid those unnecessary purchases.
That's a great tip. I'm so bad about overbuying at the store.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, any tips for navigating the grocery store without giving in to all the temptation? I mean,
The supermarket. It's a minefield, even for the healthiest eaters. My advice. Shop the perimeter of the store first. That's usually where you'll find the fresh produce, lean meats, dairy.
the foundation of our Eat Well plates.
Exactly. Once you've got those essentials, you can go into the inner aisles more strategically.
So it's like setting yourself up for success.
Precisely. Oh, and here's another one. Don't go grocery shopping when you're hungry.
Oh, I've been there, walking around with a rumbling stomach. Suddenly everything looks good.
Right. A quick snack beforehand can help you stick to your list. Make more rational choices.
Brilliant advice. Now, when I do make it into the inner aisles, I always get overwhelmed by food labels. Any tips on deciphering those?
Food labels can be confusing, but they're there to help you, not scare you. Just focus on a few key things. First, check the serving size. It's often smaller than you think.
I'm always surprised by how small they are. It's a good reminder to pay attention to portions.
Absolutely. Then, look at the calories. Saturated fat, sugar, and salt. That unhealthy trio we talked about. The NHS says to choose foods that are lower in those.
So if I'm comparing two products, the labels can help me choose the healthier one.
Exactly. Knowledge is power. Now, let's talk about one of my favorite things. Cooking at home.
I love cooking. It's so satisfying to make a meal from scratch.
And it's one of the best ways to control what you're eating when you cook at home. You choose the ingredients, the portions, the cooking methods.
I can make sure I'm using fresh, healthy ingredients, and I can avoid all those hidden sugars and bad fats that are in processed foods.
Exactly. Plus, cooking can be a really enjoyable experience. You're connecting with your food, appreciating the flavors, experimenting with different recipes.
That's like a creator outlet. We talked about mindful eating in the last part, but can you remind us what that is and why it's important?
Of course. Mindful eating is about slowing down, savoring each bite, paying attention to your body's hunger and fullness cues, being present with your food. Not just eating on autopilot while you're watching TV or on your phone.
Oh, I'm definitely guilty of that.
Yeah.
I'll finish a meal and barely remember what I ate.
We've all been there. But when we eat mindfully, we're more likely to notice when we're satisfied, which can help us avoid overeating.
It's like listening to your body's signals instead of eating until your plate is empty.
Exactly. And speaking of tuning in, another key part of healthy eating is setting realistic goals.
I love setting goals. It keeps me motivated and on track.
Absolutely. But with healthy eating, it's so important to make those goals achievable. Instead of changing your whole diet overnight, focus on 1 or 2 small changes each week.
So instead of saying, I'm never eating sugar again, I might swap out sugary drinks for water or tea.
Exactly. Or maybe you add an extra serving of vegetables to your dinner. Small changes, done consistently, can lead to big results over time.
I love that. It takes the pressure off.
And don't forget to celebrate your successes, even the small ones. It helps you stay motivated.
That's so important. It's easy to focus on what we're not doing yet, but it's also important to see how far we've come.
And remember, you don't have to do this alone. Having support, whether it's family, friends, a healthcare professional, can make all the difference.
It's amazing how much easier things are with a support system.
Absolutely. And don't underestimate online communities. There are so many great groups and forums where you can connect with people who have similar goals, offer support, advice, inspiration.
It's like having a virtual cheering squad. We've covered so much in this part. Meal planning, grocery shopping tips, cooking at home, mindful eating, setting realistic goals. I'm feeling inspired and ready to put these tips into practice.
That's great to hear. And remember, healthy eating is a journey, not a destination. There will be ups and downs, but the key is to keep learning, experimenting, and moving forward.
So true. Before we move on to the final part, where we'll talk about common questions and misconceptions about healthy eating, I'd love to hear your thoughts on hydration.
Hydration. So often overlooked, but so essential. Our bodies are about 60% water, so staying hydrated is crucial for pretty much everything.
I've definitely noticed when I'm dehydrated, I'm sluggish, I get headaches, my skin looks bad.
Exactly. Dehydration can show up in so many ways. Fatigue, headaches, constipation, even trouble concentrating. But when we're properly hydrated, we have more energy, our skin looks better, our digestion is smoother.
So how much water should we be drinking each day?
The NHS recommends 6 to 8 glasses of fluid a day.
And that includes water, low-fat milk, sugar-free drinks, tea, coffee, right?
Yep. But remember, sugary drinks and alcohol don't count. Actually, they can dehydrate you.
So it's choosing those hydrating drinks wisely.
Exactly.
Mm.
Here's a tip. Carry a reusable water bottle with you. It's a visual reminder to keep sipping.
Such a simple but effective strategy. Okay, we've got our hydration plan. We're feeling empowered with all these practical tips. We're ready to tackle those common questions and misconceptions. Let's take a quick break and we'll be right back for the final part of our deep dive. We're back for the final part of our deep dive with the NHS, all about healthy eating. We've covered so much, understanding the Eat Well Guide, practical tips. We even touched on hydration and mindful eating.
Right, two things that are so important, but often get overlooked.
It's been fascinating. I feel like we've really cleared up a lot of the confusion around healthy eating.
Yeah, I agree. But there's one more thing I wanted to talk about before we wrap up. It comes up all the time. I know a lot of people struggle with it.
Okay, I'm all ears. What is it?
The idea of cheat meals or treat days. Can you still enjoy those indulgences while trying to live a healthy lifestyle?
The age-old dilemma, right.
Uh.
Pizza and chocolate versus healthy eating. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I believe in a sustainable approach, something you can stick with long term without feeling deprived or like you're missing out. And that means allowing yourself treats in moderation.
So it's not about cutting those foods out completely. It's about incorporating them in a balanced way.
Exactly. It's about conscious choices, enjoying those indulgences mindfully. Instead of good foods and bad foods, it's about a healthy overall pattern.
So if I'm craving chocolate, I don't need to feel bad about having a little bit. It's about savoring it, enjoying it, not letting it throw off my whole healthy eating plan.
Precisely. It's finding that balance where you nourish your body with good foods, but still allow yourself the occasional treat.
And remember, it's progress, not perfection. We're all human. We're going to have times when we slip up.
Right. The key is not to let those moments derail you. Acknowledge it, learn from it, and get back on track.
So if I have a weekend where I maybe indulge a bit more, I don't need to beat myself up about it. Just get back to my healthy routine and keep going.
Exactly. Healthy eating is a journey, not a destination. It's about gradual changes. Finding what works best for you.
And there's so many resources to help you. The NHS website is amazing, and their weight loss plan is a fantastic tool for making sustainable changes.
Absolutely. And don't forget about community. Surround yourself with supportive people, friends, family, online groups, They can offer encouragement, accountability, make a big difference.
This deep dive has been so insightful. I feel so much more confident about healthy eating now.
Me too. It's been great sharing these insights. Hopefully our listeners feel empowered to make positive changes in their own lives.
Before we go, any final words of wisdom for our listeners?
Well, think about one small change you can make today, based on everything we've talked about. Maybe adding more veggies to your dinner, swapping a sugary drink for water, trying a new recipe with those protein-packed pulses.
Or maybe it's just taking a moment to practice mindful eating.
Hmm,
Before your next meal, whatever it is, remember those small changes. Done consistently, they make a big difference.
well said. It's about taking action, embracing those small steps, celebrating the wins along the way.
This has been a fantastic deep dive into healthy eating with the NHS. Thanks for joining us on this journey. We'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration.
Until then, stay curious, stay nourished, and keep learning.